Listen carefully. Can you hear the waves? Can you hear the wind moving slowly through the darkness? It is the night of June 11th, 1962. The cold water surrounding Alcatraz Island is almost completely silent. Inside the prison, hundreds of prisoners are asleep. The guards continue walking through the long hallways exactly as they do every night. Everything appears normal. But hidden deep inside the prison, 3 men are waiting. They know that within a few hours, history will change forever. Many years later, investigators, journalists, historians, and ordinary people would still be asking the same question. Did these men survive? Or did the ocean claim their lives? Tonight, we enter one of the greatest mysteries in American history. Close your eyes. Our story begins now. Long before Alcatraz became America's most feared prison, the island served as a military fortress. Over time, it became a place where the government sent its most dangerous criminals. The prison was surrounded by freezing water. Powerful currents moved continuously around the island. Every prisoner understood the same terrifying reality. Nobody escaped from Alcatraz. At least, that was what everyone believed. Time moved differently inside Alcatraz. Every morning began with the sound of steel doors opening. Every night ended with the sound of heavy footsteps echoing through empty hallways. The prisoners followed the same routine every day. Nothing changed, nothing moved, nothing improved. But among these men was someone very different. His name was Frank Morris, and he had already begun to notice that even the strongest walls sometimes contain hidden weaknesses. The cold night continued. Beyond the prison walls, powerful waves struck the rocky shore below. Inside the prison, Frank Morris remained perfectly calm. For months, he had carefully observed every movement made by the guards. Every footstep, every door, every sound. Then he noticed something unusual. He was not alone. 2 brothers had been watching the guards just as carefully as he had. Their names were John Anglin and Clarence Anglin, and together they would begin planning one of the boldest prison escapes in history. Unlike many prisoners, the Anglin brothers understood the power of the water surrounding Alcatraz Island. As children, they had spent countless hours near rivers and lakes. They understood currents. They understood weather. Most importantly, they understood survival. Frank Morris immediately recognized how valuable these skills would become. A dangerous plan was beginning to take shape. Slowly, patiently, and silently. As the days passed, the 3 men began paying closer attention to their surroundings. The prison guards never noticed anything unusual. Everything appeared normal. That was exactly what Frank Morris wanted. The greatest secrets are often hidden in plain sight, and the 3 prisoners intended to keep their secret hidden for as long as possible. Late one evening, Frank Morris discovered something that would change everything. Hidden behind the ventilation system was aging concrete that had slowly weakened over the years. At first glance, it seemed unimportant, but Frank immediately recognized an opportunity. Perhaps the prison walls were not as strong as everyone believed. Night after night, the three prisoners continued their work. Outside, the ocean moved endlessly beneath the dark sky. Inside, tiny pieces of concrete slowly disappeared from the walls. The work demanded extraordinary patience. Every sound mattered. Every movement mattered. Every second mattered. The guards remained completely unaware that history was unfolding only a few feet away. Meanwhile, Frank Morris remained focused. He knew that even the smallest mistake could destroy everything. The work became more difficult every day. The prisoners could only work for short periods of time. If the guards heard unusual sounds, the entire operation would be over. To protect themselves, the prisoners developed a simple but effective strategy. Whenever they heard footsteps approaching, they stopped immediately. Then, silence returned once again. The prison continued sleeping peacefully, unaware of the secret hidden behind the walls. Then, one evening, everything changed. Beyond the damaged concrete wall, Frank Morris discovered a narrow opening. A hidden passageway stretched into the darkness beyond the prison cells. For the first time, the impossible no longer seemed impossible. The dream of freedom suddenly felt real. But the most dangerous part of the journey had only just begun. The ocean was still waiting. The guards were still watching. And Alcatraz was still standing. The night air drifted quietly through the hidden passageway. For several long moments, nobody spoke. Frank Morris slowly raised his flashlight and looked deeper into the darkness. The narrow tunnel stretched far beyond the prison walls. Years of dust covered the old pipes. Cold air moved gently through the space. For the first time, the three prisoners realized that escape might truly be possible. But reaching the tunnel was only the beginning. A much greater challenge still lay ahead. They would have to fool the guards, and that would require something extraordinary. As the days passed, the prisoners continued gathering materials. Every object had a purpose. Every action had a reason. Nothing could be wasted. The men collected soap, pieces of paper, glue, and human hair from the prison barber shop. Little by little, an unusual plan began to take shape. They were preparing to create something that would eventually fool the entire prison. Night after night, the prisoners carefully worked in complete silence. Slowly, the strange objects began to resemble human faces. Eyes appeared. Noses appeared. Hair was carefully attached to the heads. Every tiny detail mattered. The men knew that their lives would soon depend upon these creations. The slightest mistake could destroy everything. Outside the prison walls, the ocean continued its endless movement. The waves struck the rocks below the island exactly as they had for thousands of years. Inside the prison, however, everything was changing. The hidden tunnel grew larger. The tools became stronger. The plan became more dangerous, and the prisoners moved one step closer to freedom. The days passed quietly. Morning after morning, the guards followed the same routine. The prisoners woke up, ate breakfast, and returned to their cells. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary. That was exactly what Frank Morris wanted. The more ordinary life appeared, the less attention the guards would pay to the three prisoners. Meanwhile, hidden behind the walls, the secret tunnel continued to grow. The plan was moving forward. Slowly, carefully, silently. As darkness returned to the island, the three prisoners gathered together once again. They knew that time was running out. Every additional day increased the risk of discovery. The men continued building their escape equipment. Raincoats were collected. Rubber materials were carefully prepared. Everything had to be perfect, because soon they would be placing their lives in the hands of the ocean. The cold wind continued blowing across San Francisco Bay. Far away, the city lights shimmered through the darkness. Inside Alcatraz, the guards remained completely unaware of what was happening around them. The prisoners continued their work with extraordinary patience. There was no room for fear. There was no room for hesitation. There was only one goal: freedom. As the night grew darker, the prisoners carefully examined every detail of their plan. Each movement had been studied countless times. Every possible mistake had been considered. Even so, uncertainty remained. Nobody knew what would happen once they stepped beyond the prison walls. Nobody knew whether they would survive. But there was no turning back now. The night of June 11th, 1962, had finally arrived. The cold wind moved across the island exactly as it had done thousands of times before. The waves continued striking the rocks below. Nothing appeared unusual. Inside the prison, the guards followed their ordinary routine. Doors closed. Lights went out. Silence slowly filled the building. This was the moment the three prisoners had been waiting for. For months, they had prepared for this single night. Now, there would be no second chance. Frank Morris remained perfectly still. John Anglin remained perfectly still. Clarence Anglin remained perfectly still. Each man waited quietly inside his cell. Then the signal finally came. The escape had begun. The artificial heads were carefully placed beneath the blankets. From a distance, the sleeping figures appeared completely real. The guards saw nothing unusual. The prison remained silent. And in that silence, history quietly changed forever. One by one, the prisoners climbed through the narrow openings hidden behind the walls. Every movement was slow. Every sound was dangerous. Far below them, the dark waters of San Francisco Bay continued moving endlessly through the night. The men knew that discovery would mean failure. Still, they continued moving forward. There was no turning back. Beyond the prison cells, a narrow maintenance passage stretched into the darkness. The air was cold. Dust drifted slowly through the weak beams of light coming from their flashlights. Nobody spoke. There was no need for words. Each man understood exactly what had to be done. Far below them, the waves continued crashing against the rocks. The sound echoed through the night like a warning. But the prisoners continued moving forward. The climb was long and dangerous. Every step had to be taken carefully. The old metal structures creaked softly beneath their feet. A single mistake could send everything crashing into the darkness below. Frank Morris led the way. The Anglin brothers followed close behind. The journey toward freedom had truly begun. At last, the men reached the upper section of the prison. Above them stood the roof of Alcatraz. For several moments, they remained perfectly still. The guards were nearby. Searchlights moved slowly through the darkness. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the sound of the ocean below. The prisoners waited. And then they moved. The cold night wind struck their faces as they stepped onto the roof. For the first time in years, there were no steel bars in front of them. Only darkness. Only fog. Only the distant lights of San Francisco. Freedom seemed so close, yet the most dangerous challenge still lay ahead. The ocean was waiting. The cold wind struck their faces as they carefully crossed the roof of the prison. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. The three men already understood the danger that surrounded them. Below, the freezing water moved endlessly through the darkness. Above, thick clouds drifted silently across the night sky. Every step brought them closer to freedom. And every step brought them closer to death. Slowly, the prisoners climbed down the outer side of the prison building. The old concrete walls felt cold beneath their hands. The sound of crashing waves echoed through the darkness below. One mistake would be enough. One moment of fear would change everything. Yet the men continued moving forward. Months earlier, the prisoners had collected dozens of rubber raincoats. Piece by piece, they transformed those simple materials into a carefully designed raft. Now, for the first time, they would discover whether their hard work had been enough. The ocean would decide the rest. Far away, San Francisco continued sleeping peacefully. Cars moved quietly through the streets. Lights glowed inside distant buildings. Nobody knew what was happening on the isolated island in the middle of the bay. Nobody knew that one of the most famous prison escapes in history was taking place. The raft was ready. The paddles were ready. The ocean was waiting. For several moments, the three men stood in complete silence. The cold wind continued blowing around them. Then, Frank Morris looked toward the distant city lights. Without speaking a single word, the men stepped into the darkness. The water was darker than the night sky above. Cold waves rose and fell around the small raft. For years, the prisoners had dreamed about this moment. Now, there was no way back. The distant lights of San Francisco glowed faintly through the heavy fog. Behind them stood Alcatraz. Ahead of them stood uncertainty. The wind continued to move across the water, and the journey had only just begun. The freezing water surrounded the raft from every direction. Strong currents pushed endlessly against the small vessel. The prisoners fought to maintain their balance. Nobody spoke. Only the sound of the wind and the waves filled the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, a ship's horn echoed through the bay. The men continued moving forward. Back on the island, everything remained quiet. The guards continued following their normal routine. Steel doors remained closed. The long corridors remained silent. Nobody suspected that 3 prisoners had already disappeared into the darkness. The deception had worked perfectly, at least for the moment. Far from the prison, the raft continued drifting through the darkness. The cold became more intense with every passing minute. The prisoners could no longer see the island clearly. They could barely see one another. Fog covered everything. The world around them seemed to disappear, yet they continued onward. The night slowly faded away. A cold gray light appeared above the horizon. Morning had arrived. Inside the prison, the guards continued their work exactly as they had done every day before. Nothing appeared unusual. Nothing appeared out of place. No one imagined that one of the most extraordinary escapes in history had already taken place. The secret remained hidden. But not for long. The sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor. One of the guards approached the prison cells. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Blankets covered the sleeping figures. The prisoners appeared to be resting peacefully. The guard continued walking. Then something unexpected happened. A strange object rolled across the floor. Within seconds, the silence disappeared. The guard stopped immediately. For a moment, he could not believe what he was seeing. The figure lying in the bed was not a prisoner. It was only an artificial head. The entire prison suddenly erupted into chaos. Doors opened. Voices shouted through the corridors. Alarms echoed across the island. The impossible had become reality. News of the escape spread rapidly throughout the prison hallways. Every available guard joined the search. The roof was examined. The corridors were inspected. The tunnels were investigated. But the prisoners had already vanished. Only questions remained behind. Where had they gone? And how had they accomplished the impossible? As the first rays of sunlight spread across San Francisco Bay, the atmosphere inside Alcatraz Island changed completely. The prison that nobody could escape from had been defeated. The guards stood in silence. Nobody could understand what had happened. The prisoners had disappeared. Their cells were empty. Their handmade tools remained hidden inside the walls. Every new discovery created even more questions. The mystery had only just begun. Within hours, investigators arrived on the island. Special agents examined every room, every corridor, and every tunnel. Nothing was ignored. The damaged ventilation openings were measured carefully. The handmade tools were collected as evidence. Each object told part of the story. Yet the most important question remained unanswered. Where were the three men? Meanwhile, search teams moved across the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay. Boats crossed the waves. Helicopters circled overhead. Officers searched every possible location. The cold wind continued blowing across the ocean. But the three prisoners remained missing. There was no sign of Frank Morris. There was no sign of John Anglin. There was no sign of Clarence Anglin. As the search continued, investigators discovered something unusual. Floating in the water was a small package containing personal belongings. Nearby, fragments of the handmade raft were found. The discovery created a new theory. Perhaps the prisoners had entered the water. Perhaps the ocean had defeated them. But nobody knew the truth. And nobody would know the truth for many years. The search continued throughout the day. The cold waters of San Francisco Bay remained silent. Investigators searched the coastline. They searched nearby islands. They searched the ocean itself. Hour after hour, the mystery grew deeper. The wind continued to move across the water. The waves continued striking the rocks. And still, there was no sign of the missing men. Soon, rumors began spreading across the city. Some people believed the prisoners had drowned. Others believed that they had successfully escaped. Newspapers quickly published the extraordinary story. Telephones rang constantly. Journalists rushed to gather information. Everyone wanted answers. Yet the truth remained hidden. Meanwhile, investigators carefully examined the prison itself. The evidence revealed the extraordinary level of planning involved in the escape. The prisoners had spent months preparing for their journey. They had created tools. They had built a raft. They had constructed artificial heads. Piece by piece, the entire story slowly emerged. As the investigation continued, one fact became increasingly clear. The prisoners had demonstrated remarkable intelligence, discipline, and patience. This had not been an impulsive decision. It had been a carefully organized operation. Every movement had been planned. Every risk had been considered. The question was no longer how they escaped. The question was whether they survived. As the morning slowly passed, investigators continued searching every corner of the island. The cold wind blew across the empty prison yard. The waves struck the cliffs below exactly as they always had. Nothing seemed different. And yet, everything had changed. The three men were gone. Only their shadows remained behind. Somewhere beyond the fog, the truth was waiting. Then, something unexpected happened. Witnesses began sharing unusual stories. One person claimed to have seen a dark object floating across the water. Another believed that a small raft had drifted toward the shore during the night. Nobody could verify these stories. Even so, investigators listened carefully. Every detail mattered. Every possibility deserved attention. Meanwhile, reporters from across the country continued arriving in San Francisco. The mysterious escape dominated newspaper headlines. People discussed the case in homes, restaurants, offices, and schools. Everyone wanted to know the answer. Had the prisoners succeeded? Or had the cold waters of the bay ended their journey forever? The mystery continued to grow. Days passed. Weeks passed. Months passed. Still, no definite answer appeared. The ocean remained silent. The prisoners remained missing. Investigators developed new theories. Experts debated every possibility. Yet one question continued to haunt everyone involved. What truly happened on that cold night in June of 1962? The investigation continued. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Still, the waters surrounding Alcatraz Island remained silent. Then, investigators received an unexpected report. A fisherman claimed that he had seen unusual debris floating across the bay shortly after the escape. The discovery immediately attracted attention. Could this finally be the clue everyone had been waiting for? Or was it merely another mystery hidden within the darkness? Investigators quickly moved toward the location. The water was cold. The wind was strong. For hours, search teams examined every object they discovered. Some pieces appeared to belong to the handmade raft. Others remained impossible to identify. Every discovery created new questions. Every answer seemed to lead to another mystery. Meanwhile, the families of the missing prisoners continued waiting for news. Days passed quietly. Weeks passed quietly. Yet hope remained alive. Some relatives believed the men had survived. Others feared the worst. Nobody knew what to believe. And the ocean revealed nothing. As the months continued passing, the story spread across the entire country. Television stations discussed the escape. Journalists debated the evidence. Experts developed new theories. Some believed that the prisoners had drowned in the freezing water. Others believed that they had escaped successfully. The truth remained hidden somewhere between those possibilities. The days slowly became years. The years slowly became decades. Yet the mystery remained alive. The cold waters surrounding Alcatraz Island continued moving exactly as they had on the night of the escape. The island remained silent. The prison stood motionless beneath the fog. Many investigators believed that the three men had never reached the shore, but not everyone agreed. Some people still believed that the prisoners had survived. Over time, strange stories began appearing. Some witnesses claimed to have seen unidentified boats moving through the darkness. Others believed that the prisoners had received secret assistance from friends waiting beyond the island. Investigators carefully examined every possibility, yet solid evidence remained difficult to find. The mystery continued to grow. As the years passed, people became increasingly fascinated by the story. Books were written, television programs were produced. Investigators continued searching for answers. The escape from Alcatraz gradually became one of the most famous mysteries in American history. Even today, many people continue searching for the truth. Late at night, when the fog moves across the bay and the wind touches the water, some people still remember the remarkable events of June 1962. Perhaps the prisoners survived. Perhaps they disappeared forever. The truth remains hidden somewhere within the darkness, and the ocean continues guarding its secrets. Years passed. The investigation continued. The files grew larger. Photographs filled the archives. Maps covered the walls of government offices. Every clue was examined carefully. Every witness was questioned. Yet the answers remained hidden. The story of Alcatraz had become more than an investigation. It had become a legend. Then, another theory began attracting attention. Some investigators believed that the prisoners had reached a nearby island before continuing their journey. Others disagreed completely. According to official reports, the freezing water and powerful currents would have made survival almost impossible. But impossible things sometimes happen. That was precisely what made the mystery so fascinating. Many years later, people continued debating the events of that night. Experts examined weather reports. They studied ocean currents. They calculated distances. The evidence was carefully analyzed again and again, yet no conclusion satisfied everyone. The mystery remained alive. Even now, the cold waters surrounding Alcatraz Island continue to hold their secrets. The fog still covers the island. The waves still strike the rocks below. And somewhere within the darkness, the answer may still exist. Perhaps the truth will be discovered one day, or perhaps it will remain hidden forever. The years passed quietly. The world changed. Cities expanded. Technology advanced. But the mystery of Alcatraz remained exactly where it had always been. Then, decades later, an unexpected development captured the attention of investigators. A mysterious letter appeared. According to the writer, one of the escapees had survived. Suddenly, the investigation began once again. The letter immediately raised countless questions. Who had written it? Could the information be trusted? Or was it simply another attempt to deepen the mystery? Investigators examined every detail carefully. Every word mattered. Every sentence carried the possibility of revealing the truth. Yet certainty remained frustratingly out of reach. As news of the letter spread across the country, public interest returned immediately. People discussed the case once again. Television programs revisited the mystery. New theories emerged. Old theories were challenged. And the question that had remained unanswered for decades continued to echo across America. What truly happened on the night of June 11th, 1962? Late at night, when the fog drifts slowly across the water, Alcatraz still appears as mysterious as ever. The prison remains silent. The waves continue moving endlessly through the darkness. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the answer may still exist. Perhaps the prisoners survived. Perhaps they did not. For now, the truth remains hidden. The mysterious letter was carefully examined. Investigators analyzed the handwriting. They compared fingerprints. They reviewed old records. Every possible clue was studied. The work continued for months. But as always, the mystery refused to surrender its secrets. The truth remained hidden, somewhere between fact and legend.
Experts returned to the waters surrounding Alcatraz.
Ocean currents were measured carefully. Wind speeds were analyzed. Weather reports from the night of the escape were studied once again. The scientists hoped that modern technology might finally answer the questions that had haunted investigators for decades. Yet the ocean remained silent.
Slowly, a new possibility began attracting attention. Perhaps the prisoners had not traveled directly toward the city. Perhaps they had followed a completely different route. This theory changed everything. Suddenly, investigators began examining locations that had been ignored for many years. The search continued.
Late at night, when darkness settles across the bay, the mystery feels almost alive. The cold wind continues moving across the water. The waves continue striking the shore. And Alcatraz remains exactly where it has always been. Silent, motionless, waiting. Perhaps the truth is still out there, hidden somewhere beyond the fog.
The investigation continued to move forward. Year after year, investigators searched for answers. Old evidence was carefully examined once again. Forgotten reports were reopened. Witnesses were questioned. Photographs were studied. And slowly, a clearer picture of that extraordinary night began to emerge. Even so, important pieces of the puzzle were still missing.
Some experts remained convinced that the prisoners had drowned. The freezing water had been extremely dangerous. The currents had been incredibly powerful. The weather conditions had been unpredictable. From their perspective, survival seemed unlikely. But others strongly disagreed. They believed that careful planning and determination had made the impossible possible. As the debate continued, new photographs attracted attention. Some people believed that the images showed two of the escapees many years after the famous escape. Others argued that the photographs proved nothing at all. The truth remained uncertain, yet the mystery became even more fascinating, and the world continued watching.
Late at night, the dark waters surrounding Alcatraz Island in June 1962, the waves continue moving through the darkness. The fog continues drifting across the bay. The prison remains silent. Perhaps the answer lies somewhere out there. Perhaps it has been waiting patiently all this time.
More than 60 years have passed since that remarkable night, yet the mystery remains unsolved. The prison cells are empty now. The guards are gone. The voices have faded into history. But the questions remain exactly where they have always been. Did the three prisoners survive? Or did the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay claim their lives forever? No one knows.
Today, thousands of visitors travel to Alcatraz every year. They walk through the silent corridors. They stand inside the famous prison cells, and they ask the same question that investigators have asked for decades. What truly happened here? Perhaps the answer is hidden within the walls themselves. Or perhaps it disappeared into the ocean long ago.
Investigators may continue searching. Historians may continue debating. Writers may continue telling the story. But one thing remains certain. The escape from Alcatraz changed history forever. It became more than an escape. It became a legend. And legends never truly disappear. Even now, on cold and foggy nights, Alcatraz remains surrounded by mystery. The ocean continues moving endlessly through the darkness. The wind continues whispering across the island. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the truth may still be waiting for someone to find it. As the years passed, 3 major theories emerged. The first theory suggested that the prisoners had drowned in the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay. According to this explanation, the powerful currents had simply been too strong. The second theory offered a very different possibility. Perhaps the prisoners had reached the shore safely. Perhaps they had begun completely new lives under different names. The third theory was even more mysterious. Some people believed that outside assistance had been waiting for them. Even now, nobody knows which theory is correct. Many experts continued supporting the official explanation. The ocean was cold. The currents were powerful. The weather conditions were dangerous. Survival seemed extremely unlikely. Yet some investigators refused to accept that conclusion. They believed that the prisoners had prepared far too carefully to fail. The debate continued. Meanwhile, supporters of the survival theory pointed towards several unusual discoveries. There were reports of suspicious boats. There were mysterious photographs. There were anonymous letters. Each discovery added another piece to the puzzle. Yet none of the evidence was strong enough to reveal the complete truth. The mystery remained alive. Late at night, the wind still moves across the island. The waves still strike the rocky shore. The fog still surrounds the prison. Everything appears exactly as it did decades ago. Only one thing has changed. The men who disappeared into the darkness have become legends. And their story continues to fascinate the world. By this point, the escape from Alcatraz had become far more than a criminal investigation. It had become a symbol. For some people, it was a story about courage. For others, it was a story about patience, intelligence, and determination. The 3 prisoners had spent months preparing for a single opportunity. Every movement had been planned. Every detail had mattered. And that careful planning transformed an impossible dream into reality. Historians continued searching for answers. Researchers examined old newspapers. Scientists studied weather conditions. Investigators reviewed forgotten documents. Each new discovery added another piece to the puzzle. Yet the complete picture remained hidden. The silence surrounding Alcatraz continued. Many years later, people still stand on the shore of San Francisco Bay and look toward the island. They imagine the cold wind. They imagine the powerful waves. They imagine the darkness that surrounded the prisoners on that unforgettable night. And they ask themselves the same question. Could they really have survived? Perhaps one day a forgotten document will finally appear. Perhaps a new witness will reveal the truth. Or perhaps the answer will remain hidden forever. Until that day arrives, the mystery of Alcatraz will continue to live on.
just as the waves
As the
continued
investigation
to move
expanded,
endlessly across the
another
bay.
theory attracted attention. According to this theory, the prisoners may have received help from people waiting outside the prison hallways. Supporters of this idea believed that a boat could have been hidden somewhere within the bay. Under the cover of darkness and heavy fog, the prisoners might have reached the vessel safely. If that happened, their chances of survival would have increased dramatically. But investigators could never prove the theory. Other experts proposed an entirely different explanation. They believed that the prisoners had traveled toward Angel Island before continuing their journey. According to this theory, the currents may have carried the raft in an unexpected direction. Modern computer simulations later suggested that such a route might have been possible. Once again, the mystery grew even deeper. Tonight, the island remains exactly where it has always been. The wind continues blowing across the water. The fog continues drifting through the darkness. The waves continue crashing against the shore. And the mystery remains unsolved. Perhaps the answer is waiting. Perhaps it is gone forever. Only time knows the truth. For decades, the mystery of Alcatraz has remained one of the most fascinating stories in American history. Millions of people have searched for answers. Thousands of theories have been created. Yet the truth continues to hide within the shadows. The prison itself remains silent. The ocean continues moving endlessly, and the legend continues to grow. Many investigators believe that some mysteries are never meant to be solved. Perhaps the answer disappeared long ago. Perhaps it remains hidden within forgotten documents. Or perhaps it rests somewhere beneath the cold waters of San Francisco Bay. Nobody knows for certain. That uncertainty is what keeps the story alive. Even today, visitors who arrive at Alcatraz Island in June 1962 often pause for a moment and look toward the water. The fog moves slowly across the bay. The wind touches the rocky shoreline. The atmosphere feels almost unchanged. It is easy to imagine the three prisoners disappearing into the darkness all those years ago. Somewhere between history and legend, the story of the Alcatraz escape continues to exist. It reminds us that determination can overcome enormous obstacles. It reminds us that mysteries can survive for generations. And it reminds us that some questions never receive simple answers. The mystery continues. The story began with a simple idea. Three men looked beyond the walls surrounding them and imagined freedom. At first, their goal appeared impossible. The prison had been designed to prevent escape. The ocean had been designed by nature itself. Every obstacle stood against them, yet they refused to surrender. Night after night, the prisoners continued preparing. They built tools. They widened the openings hidden within the walls. They created artificial heads. They constructed a raft. Piece by piece, the impossible became possible. Patience became their greatest weapon. Then, the night finally arrived. The plan was put into motion. The prisoners disappeared through the hidden passageways. The guards remained unaware of what was happening. The cold waters of San Francisco Bay waited patiently beneath the darkness. Everything depended upon courage, timing, and luck. More than half a century has passed since the escape. Still, investigators continue searching for answers. Old records remain locked inside government archives. Thousands of photographs have been examined. Thousands of reports have been studied. And yet, the truth remains hidden. Perhaps that is exactly what makes this story unforgettable. Many investigators believe that the answer may never be discovered. The ocean changes constantly. Time destroys evidence. Memories slowly fade away. Even the people who witnessed those events have gradually disappeared. But the mystery remains alive. The island remembers everything. For decades, people have continued returning to the island. Some are historians. Some are investigators. Some are simply curious visitors. All of them come searching for the same answer. What truly happened on that cold night in June 1962? The mystery continues. The ocean continues moving. The fog continues drifting. And the legend of Alcatraz continues growing with every passing year. Perhaps one day, the truth will finally appear. Until then, the story remains unfinished. The deeper investigators looked into the case, the stranger the story became. A photograph discovered years later captured everyone's attention. Some people believed that the image showed two of the escapees. Others argued that the photograph proved absolutely nothing. Experts carefully studied every detail. Yet no agreement was ever reached. The mystery continued. Years later, another unexpected clue appeared. A handwritten letter arrived. According to the message, one of the prisoners had survived the escape. The writer claimed that age and illness had finally forced him to tell the truth. Investigators immediately began searching once again. But questions remained unanswered. Scientists also became interested in the mystery. Using modern technology, they recreated the weather conditions from June 1962. Computer models analyzed the ocean currents. Wind patterns were examined carefully. The results suggested that survival might have been possible, but certainty remained impossible. Late at night, the waters surrounding Alcatraz still appear exactly as they did decades ago. The waves continue their endless journey. The fog drifts silently across the bay. And somewhere beyond the darkness, the truth continues to wait. Perhaps it will remain hidden forever. Investigators continued gathering information from every available source. Old records were reopened. Witnesses were interviewed once again. Even the smallest details were carefully examined. Everyone hoped that one forgotten clue might finally reveal the truth. But the mystery remained as powerful as ever. The years continued passing. The world changed. Technology improved. Entire generations grew older. Yet the mystery remained exactly the same. No one knew where the prisoners had gone. No one knew whether they had survived. As the investigation entered a new era, Experts agreed upon one important fact. The escape itself had been a remarkable achievement. Months of careful preparation had transformed an impossible dream into reality. Every movement had been calculated. Every risk had been accepted. That alone ensured the story would never be forgotten. Late at night, Alcatraz still stands silently in the middle of the bay. The waves continue moving endlessly. The fog continues covering the island, and the mystery continues growing. Perhaps the answer is still waiting to be discovered. The final years of the investigation produced more questions than answers. Experts studied old reports. Scientists analyzed ocean currents. Historians reviewed forgotten documents. Each discovery seemed important, yet every path eventually led back to uncertainty. The truth remained hidden, somewhere beyond the fog. Many people continued believing that the prisoners had survived. Others remained convinced that the ocean had claimed their lives. Both sides presented evidence. Both sides defended their conclusions. Yet neither side could prove its theory completely. The debate continued. Meanwhile, Alcatraz remained silent. The old prison stood exactly where it had stood for decades. The wind moved slowly across the island. The waves crashed against the rocks below. The fog continued drifting across the water. Time passed. The mystery remained. Perhaps the truth will be discovered someday. Perhaps another clue will appear unexpectedly. Or perhaps the mystery will remain unsolved forever. Until then, the story of the Alcatraz escape will continue inspiring curiosity around the world. As the night grows darker, the island becomes even more mysterious. The ocean continues moving endlessly. The fog grows thicker. And the legend of Alcatraz continues to survive. Perhaps the answer has been hidden in plain sight all along. More than 6 decades have passed since that extraordinary night. Entire generations have grown older. Technology has changed. Cities have changed. The world itself has changed. Yet the mystery of Alcatraz remains exactly the same. Some questions have never been answered. Perhaps they never will be. Frank Morris, John Anglin, Clarence Anglin. These 3 names became part of history. Whether they survived or not, their escape remains one of the most daring prison escapes ever attempted. Their determination transformed an impossible dream into an unforgettable legend. Even today, thousands of visitors travel to Alcatraz every year. They walk through the prison hallways. They stand inside the cells. They listen to the sound of the waves. And they all ask exactly the same question. What truly happened here? Perhaps the prisoners escaped successfully. Perhaps the ocean claimed them forever. Perhaps somebody helped them disappear. The truth remains hidden. The mystery remains alive. And the legend continues to grow. Tonight, the wind still blows across the island. The waves still strike the rocks. the fog still covers the water. And somewhere, perhaps beyond the horizon, the answer may still exist. Until that day arrives, the mystery of Alcatraz will remain one of the greatest unsolved stories in history. This is the end of the story. Or perhaps it is only the beginning.